or have another print disability which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Will Evans, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the latest issues of the Batavia Daily News, serving Genesee, Wyoming, and Orleans counties on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. And our first article carries the headline, Inferno Strikes in Alabama. Blaze triggers 5-county response on Bloomingdale Road. Investigation is continuing into the cause of Tuesday's inferno, which included explosions and generated a smoke plume visible for miles. The blaze was reported at 8:39 p.m. in a storage building at 894 Bloomingdale Road. The flames threatened nearby propane tanks, including one rated at 1,000 gallons, and generated an intensive response involving firefighters from 5 counties. Besides the big propane tank, 3 smaller tanks were also located nearby outside the structure, said Director Tim Yeager of the Genesee County Office of Emergency Management. Melanie Snyder of Alabama lives about 3.5 miles away from the fire scene. Snyder said she and her father were on their way Tuesday evening to get gasoline at the Res Smoke Shop and Gas Mart, located near the fire scene. Snyder and her father were only able to get as far as the Res's parking lot. We heard about 4 explosions and they shook the ground while we were there, she said. Snyder and her father were able to get gasoline elsewhere, but said the attendant at the location, a gas station on Ledge Road, also reported hearing explosions. Snyder said fire trucks were lined up to use the last available fire hydrant on Bloomingdale Road near Ackerson Road. Scanner reports also had fire trucks drawing water from at least one nearby pond. Genesee County Sheriff's deputies, state police, and ambulances were also at the scene, she said. People were gathered on their lawns in the area to watch. A crowd was also at the Res, maybe a dozen vehicles in the parking lot, and it appeared the business may have been moving people from the location, Snyder said. Several small propane tanks and other materials stored inside the building exploded during the fire, Yeager said. The fire department focused their efforts on keeping the external propane tanks cool while combating this large fire, he said. Due to the lack of municipal water on property, all water had to be transported by tanker truck to the scene, slowing the ability of the fire department to apply water in sufficient amounts to extinguish the fire. One propane tank pressure relief valve did activate, he continued. This is a critical safety device designed to keep the tank from a boiling, liquid expanding vapor explosion. The PRV device activated and performed as designed, reducing the internal pressure. Such explosions, the acronym is BLEVE, can be violent and highly dangerous. Once the firefighters were able to apply enough water to the tank, the relief valve closed, Yeager said. All the tanks were monitored continually during the event to ensure the safety of the firefighters and community. The fire posed several hazards and challenges to the Alabama Fire Department, he said, which worked in concert with multiple departments responding as mutual aid. The blaze was confined to the storage building, he said. One person, not a first responder, was treated for smoke inhalation and released, with no other injuries reported. Fire departments from Genesee, Orleans, Wyoming, Erie, and Niagara counties responded to the scene. A list of responding departments included Alabama, Oakfield, Elba, Pembroke, East Pembroke, City of Batavia, Town of Batavia, Alexander, Corfu, Bennington, Terry's Corners, East Shelby, Barry, Crittenden, Akron, Shelby, Alba, Ridgeway, and the Lyndonville Joint Fire District. Those responding also included the Genesee County Office of Emergency Management, the Genesee County Sheriff's Office, Mercy EMS, the Orleans County Fire Coordinator's Office, the Niagara County Fire Coordinator's Office, National Grid, and State Police. Additional fire departments from across the region were on standby, filling in at area fire halls. Turning to Groveland now, 5 officers injured at Groveland. Inmate suffers deep cuts in escape attempt. 5 correction officers were injured and inmate tried to escape during 2 separate incidents at Groveland Correctional Facility. The incidents illustrate the dangers corrections officers face on the job, officials from the New York State Corrections Officers and Police Benevolent Association said Tuesday in a news release. The first incident occurred June 23rd, when 2 officers observed an inmate struggling to stand near the prison's basketball courts, NYSCOPBA officials said. The inmate began vomiting and was mumbling incoherently when they approached. The officers believed the inmate required immediate medical attention and placed him into a transport van to be taken to the facility infirmary. The inmate became increasingly agitated while being transported, officials said. He allegedly reared back suddenly and kicked one officer in the side of the face when an officer tried to escort him from the van into the infirmary. The officer was knocked backward into the transport vehicle. Staff immediately forced the inmate to the ground, secured him, and placed him onto a gurney before he was brought into the infirmary for medical treatment. The assaulted officer sustained facial swelling, headache, and dizziness. He was transported to Millard Fillmore Suburban Hospital, where he was diagnosed with a concussion. A corrections sergeant also sustained shoulder and knee injuries while helping subdue the inmate. He was treated by the facility's medical staff and remained on duty. The inmate, 34, is serving a 1 to 3 year sentence after being convicted in 2025 in Livingston County in 2025 of his 3rd DWI offense. The escape attempt occurred June the 30th, NYSCOPBA officials said. A sergeant was interviewing an inmate inside a dormitory's recreation room when the inmate suddenly fled the area, officials said. As the sergeant turned, the inmate ran out of the dorm and sprinted toward the facility's interior perimeter fence. Officers immediately chased the inmate as he started climbing the perimeter fence. He allegedly refused repeated orders to stop climbing the fence and became entangled in the razor wire at the top of the fence. Responding staff were eventually able to free the inmate from the razor wire and pull him safely to the ground, but refused to let go of the fence. After multiple orders, the staff was able to place him in handcuffs. The inmate was taken to the facility infirmary before being taken to Wyoming County Community Hospital for treatment of deep cuts to his forearm, elbow, upper arm, shoulder, back, and hands. Following treatment, he was transferred to Attica Correctional Facility and placed in a special housing unit. A sergeant suffered a puncture wound to his thumb from the razor wire and was exposed to the inmate's blood during the incident, NYSCOPBA officials said. One officer sustained significant blood exposure, while a second officer suffered an ankle injury during the apprehension. All 3 employees were transported to Noyes Memorial Hospital in Dansville for evaluation and treatment. The inmate, 46, is serving a 1 to 3 year sentence after being convicted in 2025 Onondaga County of 3rd-degree criminal possession of a weapon. These incidents demonstrate the unpredictable and dangerous conditions our members face every day, said NYSCOPBA Western Region Vice President Kenny Gold in a statement. In one incident, officers were simply trying to ensure an intoxicated inmate received medical treatment when they were met with violence that left one officer with a concussion, he said. Just a week later, staff had to respond immediately to an inmate attempting to escape by climbing a razor wire perimeter fence, resulting in additional injuries to a sergeant and officers who put their own health at risk by ensuring the inmate didn't hurt himself even worse and prevented him from fleeing into the community. NYSCOPBA members are expected to protect the public, maintain the security of our correctional facilities, and respond to medical emergencies, assaults, and escape attempts without hesitation, Gold said. Every one of those responsibilities carries significant risk, and these incidents are another reminder of the professionalism and courage correction officers and sergeants display every day while working in an increasingly dangerous environment, he said. Next up, York weighs data center moratorium. Public hearing set for Tuesday in Livingston County. The town of York has scheduled a public hearing for Tuesday on a proposed local law that would impose a 12-month moratorium on the issuance of land use approvals and building permits for data centers. The hearing is scheduled for 6:30 p.m. and be open for 30 days to provide time for public comment. The board will likely vote on the moratorium at their August 11th regular meeting, York Supervisor Gerald Deming said. According to the law, known as Local Law Number 3 of 2026, the moratorium is needed due to concerns about land use patterns, electric power demand, and grid reliability, water usage and thermal discharge, stormwater management, noise and vibration, air emissions associated with backup generation, electromagnetic interference, traffic from construction and operations, aesthetic and community character impacts, and the cumulative capacity of municipal services. Some of these issues were raised by a York resident at one of the board meetings. We had a resident that came to a board meeting that was concerned about them and didn't want to see one in the town of York. And so we looked at it a little bit, and the board came to the conclusion to do a moratorium and do a study on it and see if it's something that we want to outlaw or not, Deming said. Besides the environmental and energy concerns, the town's existing comprehensive plan may also not adequately address the unique siting, scale intensity, resiliency, and environmental externalities associated with data centers, the law states. Deming said the board wants to get more information about these projects that are going on, how they work and don't work, what kind of utilities they use, and so on. Without the moratorium, applications for data centers could proceed under existing regulations that may be insufficient to protect public health, safety, and welfare, the environment, and neighborhood characters, potentially resulting in irreversible impacts, the law reads. The moratorium will provide the town time to study the impacts, effects, and possible zoning controls over such activities, and to consider amendments to the town's zoning laws. Combined with variances already contained in the zoning ordinance, the moratorium will balance the interests between the character and resources of the town, the health and safety of the residents, and the rights of property owners or businesses who might be interested in data centers. Deming said the moratorium, most importantly, would give the board time to understand the projects better. As far as anything about data centers, I personally don't know a lot about them right now. Only what I've been reading about what's going on in Genesee County and so on, Deming said. But it gives us some time. It gives us time to look at it before somebody comes knocking on the door, he said. During the 12-month moratorium period, the York Town Board will undertake a comprehensive study of data centers, including, but not limited to, appropriate siting locations, dimensional, intensity, and performance standards, environmental review protocols, energy, water, and infrastructure considerations, decommissioning, financial surety, and monitoring and enforcement mechanisms, the law states. The law also says the board may enlist the help of consultants, town staff, and the planning board to complete the study. If needed to complete the study or pass legislation, the board reserves the right to extend the moratorium for up to 2 additional 6-month periods. The board can also terminate the moratorium prior to its scheduled expiration if it chooses. For Deming, the moratorium is about making informed decisions. We're just seeing what we want to do, what's best for the town, Deming said. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. And heading to Batavia now, Borello seeks homeless housing solutions, points to Albany County as case study. As homelessness grows in New York, straining existing support systems' capacity, State Senator George Borrello, Republican from Sunset Bay, is pointing to Albany County as a case study for how western New York counties can turn closed state facilities into supportive housing. Homelessness has spiked in New York in recent years, more than doubling between 2022 and 2024, according to a 2025 report from State Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli. During that time, homelessness increased 81% in Erie, Niagara, Genesee, Orleans, and Wyoming counties to 1,549 people, according to the same report. Members of the media, social workers, law enforcement have heard stories about, yeah, I was given a bus ticket from wherever, Ohio, Kentucky, to come to Jamestown, to come to Batavia, Borrello said. Unfortunately, New York State has become a hub for people that are unhoused with addiction issues, mental health issues, because other areas know that if they get dropped off in New York, New York's going to take care of them. To accommodate that growth, officials from New York have leaned on hotel and motel rooms. While statewide spending on family shelters and transitional housing increased from 2022 to 2024, both categories were eclipsed by a more than 200% growth in spending on hotel placements, for which agencies often paid rates that were above the market rate for apartments in the same areas, 2025 investigation by ProPublica and New York Focus found. While hotel rooms offer a roof and a bed, they don't offer the support and supervision shelters are required to provide. As their use has grown, they've become increasingly dangerous, Borrello said Wednesday. I've had several law enforcement agencies throughout my district contact me with regard to the tremendous issues, and not just law enforcement agencies. Local elected officials and code enforcement officers have reached out because of excessive problems at hotels that are housing homeless people, he said. In Chautauqua County in particular, it was incredibly bad. These places were in horrible, dangerous disrepair, just chaotic. Multiple police calls every day, fights, assaults, people operating prostitution rings, people operating illegal businesses like tattoo parlors, unlicensed. I mean, just absolute chaos. Currently, New York's Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance is weighing new rules that would require access to the same support services for homeless people placed in hotels. But Borrello said he sees another, more direct model in Albany County, where the sheriff's office has converted a portion of the county jail into supportive housing. The Sheriff's Homeless Improvement Program, or SHIP, S-H-I-P, opened in April 2020, offering 50 rooms, food, basic amenities, and medical and social support services. By early 2025, the program had served nearly 500 people and expanded to 90 rooms, including family suites. A September 2025 report on the program published by the State Department of Criminal Justice Services found that 77% of people who spent time at SHIP eventually left the program without issue. Of those, 71% secured housing, 64% found employment, 58% participated in financial planning, 52% enrolled in substance abuse treatment, 29% received help obtaining identification, and 21% connected to medical service providers. With those results, Borrello sees a case for reusing closed correctional facilities in places like Alden, Rochester, and Saulnier, and nursing homes in places like Gowanda. Without having to build something from the ground up, can we take a facility that's not being used? That would be a good setting, he said. This is not a jail. These are state prisons where it's set up as a dormitory. It's not people behind bars. Typically, they're set up like a dorm facility, a communal room, but you have the ability to provide security. You already have a place to serve food, a commissary, already there, the ability to handle a large number of people that are going to need things that were once provided when it was a prison. Everything from a health care facility to a place for them to be able to gather to an exercise facility. You have all that stuff already there, so it's a more efficient, effective, and quicker way to address the issue. Among the challenges such facilities may face are transportation and staffing. While some of Borrello's proposed locations, such as Rochester Correctional Facility, are in walkable areas, others, such as Livingston Correctional Facility and Saulnier, are located far from towns. Cost would also be higher than hotels. While the cost of supported housing conversion remains unclear, the criminal justice reform organization Vera Institute of Justice estimated that Genesee County taxpayers paid $139 per night per individual held in the county jail in 2022. The organization placed that figure at $158 per night in Orleans and Livingston counties and $301 in Wyoming County. But Borrello said a direct comparison misses the hidden cost of the current approach. I think that even the daily cost would still work out, he said, but then you've got the tremendous burden of all these emergency calls and police calls. There's a cost to that. You've got the cost of trying to dispatch substance abuse services versus giving them a central location where they could provide those services in a much more cost-effective manner. And then there's the opportunity cost to the community. For example, in a place like Fredonia, which is a busy summer destination where there are very few hotel rooms available because they're monopolized by these placements. That's a negative to the community, and certainly a cost to the community as well. It negatively impacts the economy. The cheapest solution isn't always the best one, he continued. I think that when you add that all up, you provide better services. And let's face it, right now, it's beyond money, he said. It's the fact that this has become a dangerous situation where people are not getting help, and it's become a vicious cycle. The cost factor of the problems not being resolved and people not getting help is not only a quality of life issue for those folks, but it also is an additional cost. With Albany as a case study, Borrello is lobbying for state officials to take action across New York. This is not an easy solution, but we do have at least one example to follow that we've heard has been pretty successful, he said. When you have a successful model, hopefully we can build off of that. That's really what we're pushing the governor for, to look at that model and see if this is something that we can use as a basis to create a template nationwide, statewide. A representative for Hochul's office did not return a request for comment in time for publication on Wednesday. Our next article from New York carries the headline, Coalition Aims to Squelch Robocalls. New York Attorney General Letitia James has joined a bipartisan coalition of 48 other attorneys generals in calling on the Federal Communications Commission to adopt new measures to combat illegal robocalls. The FCC released new proposals in March to strengthen existing regulations to crack down on the illegal, annoying, and intrusive practice. The calls deliver pre-recorded or artificial voice messages attempting to scam consumers, often by impersonating government agencies or financial companies, costing Americans hundreds of millions of dollars annually, including $789 million in 2024. In a letter to FCC, the coalition expressed its support for the agency's new measures and offered additional recommendations to close loopholes and more effectively stop illegal robocalls. New Yorkers are getting flooded with predatory robocalls day after day, putting their finances and personal information at risk, James said in a news release. My office is committed to tackling the epidemic of robocalls to prevent scammers from taking advantage of working families. The Federal Trade Commission has released data showing that consumers reported losing over $12.5 billion to scams in 2024, including through fraudulent calls and text. YouMail, a mobile service designed to protect users from unwanted calls, reported that in April 2026 alone, consumers in the U.S. received 4.2 billion robocalls, or about 1,600 calls per second. The FCC proposed a series of new regulations in March to increase transparency and reporting requirements for companies that sell phone numbers to reduce the likelihood that scammers obtain numbers they can use for illegal robocalls. The proposed rules focus on expanding numbering certification processes and mandating disclosure from all companies that sell access to phone number logs. The coalition is recommending the FCC take additional measures to help prevent fraud, including increasing the legal tools available for attorneys general to fight illegal robocalls, including by expanding the definition of telephone number resellers to make it easier to hold illegal robocallers accountable under the law, prohibiting the resale of certain phone numbers to make it harder for scammers to obtain numbers they can use for robocalls, expanding proposed foreign ownership certification requirements to all service providers that assign or sell telephone numbers, making it harder for scammers to hide behind shell corporations, requiring all companies that sell phone numbers and their employees to participate in mandatory education sessions on how to properly use and report their sales of phone numbers to increase transparency and tracking of number sales. And back to Batavia for our next article, Unraveling a Story. Composer explores the life of Clara Barton in Batavia Library presentation. Composer Glenn McClure's latest project is a folk opera exploring the life of Clara Barton, a pioneering nurse who founded the American Red Cross in Livingston County. McClure will share his work, which focuses on Barton's time at Jackson Sanatorium in Dansville, her struggles with mental health after years of war trauma, and her inspiration for starting the American Red Cross, during a presentation scheduled for 7 p.m. Wednesday, July 15th, in the reading room at Richmond Memorial Library, 19 Ross Street. The presentation is the latest in a series of community conversations that McClure has led in the Genesee Valley for the work, which is called Pulling the Thread, a Clara Barton Story. That internal struggle and that recovery from her own experience of trauma seems to be underserved, I think, and so it's a part of the story that I am interested in, especially since that catapults her into her biggest achievement, which is the Red Cross, McClure told the Livingston County News in April ahead of a program in Dansville. The conversations are planned to take McClure to a variety of locations with a variety of participants, including veterans groups who may have experience that is similar to her experience of war trauma, historical organizations who can speak to Barton's historical significance, and the people of Dansville who have a unique relationship with her, said McClure. It's that internal journey to the external journey that really resonates with me in her story. After reading some of Barton's personal journals in the National Archives, McClure found that Barton sometimes moves from mundane topics to what can only be described as poetry. In one of the passages in particular, McClure said, "You can kind of hear the weight inside of her and her internal struggles." She writes, "I am weary of what is so wrongly called life. I am weary of sinning and strife." But McClure noted that what is so remarkable about Barton is that she turned her strife into public service. In the midst of the difficulty, which is so profound, it's so unimaginable that you could come out of that with a drive to help others, McClure said. Barton is famously known as the Angel of the Battlefield. During the Civil War, she independently gathered and distributed supplies to the Union Army. She ventured to the front lines to nurse wounded soldiers and was at such major battles as Antietam and Fredericksburg. After the war, she established the Office of Correspondence with Friends of the Missing Men of the United States Army, successfully locating thousands of missing and deceased soldiers. While traveling in Europe, after the war, Barton learned about the International Red Cross and the Geneva Conventions, which protect the war wounded and civilians. Upon returning to the U.S., she lobbied the government to ratify the treaty. In 1881, she founded the American Red Cross at St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Dansville, where the first local chapter of the American Red Cross was organized nearly 145 years ago, shifting the organization's focus to include domestic disaster relief for floods, hurricanes, and fires. McClure is an award-winning composer and scholar. His presentation at Richmond Library is expected to delve into Barton's life in Livingston County, her battle with post-traumatic stress disorder, and the creation of the American Red Cross. The event is free to attend, but registration is requested on the library website at https://www.batavialibrary.org/event/164-31715. Again, that website is https://www.batavialibrary.org/event/164-31715. The program is in anticipation of McClure's forthcoming folk opera. A folk opera, the Geneseo composer explains, is something between a stage musical and an elaborate full opera. Popular in Germany after the era of the grand operas of the Wagner, folk operas tend to be more local in their subject matter, said McClure, showing that small towns have stories to tell. No date has been announced for its premiere. McClure has dedicated himself to building artistic collaborations with rural folks, scientists, scholars, and musicians. His music emerges from community conversations on the environment, disability, and racial equality. McClure has served on the faculties of the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, SUNY Geneseo, and Paul Smith's College in the hamlet of Paul Smith's in the Adirondacks. For more information about McClure and his projects, visit www.artforbrains.com. That's www.artforbrains.com. For more information about Richmond Memorial Library and events, visit batavialibrary.org. Find the library on Facebook at Richmond Memorial-Library and Instagram at Batavia Library. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And we'll move over to Dansville now. Granula mural nears start. Dansville Art works to host community events for summer mural project. Public art has become so much more prevalent in Livingston County since the LivCo Walls project in 2022, but Dansville has taken up the mantle and turned even more of its blank downtown walls into visual stories about its past. Much of that continued effort can be attributed to the Mural Committee from Dansville Artworks, a small group focused on bringing historically relevant murals to the village. Members include Julie Acom, Susan DeMuth, Salome Ferraro, Jennifer Luce, Sanja Olbert, Donna Nagel, and Lori Welch. An elaborate Clara Barton mural was painted in 2024 with the help of 2 artists and numerous community members on the corner of the building in the east section of Ossian Street between Main Street and Elizabeth Street, only a half block from the home of the first chapter of the American Red Cross. This year, a new mural will be placed on the north-facing wall of Sunrise Restaurant, a highly visible site in Dansville owned by the Matrusis family next to the Dansville Public Library. The historic theme is based on the first cold breakfast cereal called Granula, which was invented by Dr. James Caleb Jackson, famed proprietor of Our Home on the Hillside, now known as the Castle on the Hill. Granula was a health food designed for easy digestion, part of an overall philosophy of healing held by Jackson and his associates at the time that was centered around whole foods and hydrotherapy, or the water cure. Mural Committee Chair Julie Acom highlighted the continued interest of downtown building owners and the Mural Committee's dedication to the mission as key factors driving this public art initiative. all have a love for their community and see a vibrant downtown as a must-have for the health and well-being of the village and town, ACOM said. Rochester-based artist Josie Apollantissima will be the muralist this year, said Dansville Artworks, with hosts several public events to kick off the mural installation. Those events include Artist Talk. The public can meet and listen to Apollantissima during an Artist Talk from 7 to 8 p.m. July 16th. She will share her background as an artist and what inspired her design of the Granula mural. The program will open with historian Jane Oakes, who will tell the story of Granula in Dansville. A question and answer period follows Apollantissima's presentation. This event will be held in Sunrise's private dining room, 188 Main Street, Dansville. Community Paint Day. Dansville Artworks will host the Granula Mural Community Paint Day from 10 to 11 a.m. July 18th. Anyone who wants to help paint the Dansville Granula mural is welcome to contribute to the project by painting a small section of the artwork. Those 13 and under must be accompanied by an adult. All supplies will be provided. Participants should dress accordingly. A rain date for the event is scheduled for Sunday, July 19th from 10 to 11 a.m. Updates will be posted on Dansville Artworks Facebook page. Mural dedication and historical marker presentation. A combined Dansville Granula mural dedication and Dansville Area Historical Society marker presentation is scheduled for 10:30 a.m. August 8th. The historical marker will be dedicated to Granula as well. Light refreshments will be served post-dedication, including granola from the source, generously donated by the Dansville Granola Company, 156 Main Street, Dansville. In case of rain, the celebration will be in the Holden Room at the Dansville Public Library. This project is made possible with funds from the Aid to Localities program through the Genesee Valley Council on the Arts and the New York State Senate, as well as generous private donors. For more information, visit www.dansvilleartworks.com. That's www.dansvilleartworks.com. From Perry now, chalking up 20 years. Perry Chalk Art Festival returns Saturday. Take some chalk, find some pavement, create some of the finest local art the region's ever seen. The Perry Chalk Art Festival is returning to downtown Saturday, bringing its mix of art and entertainment, and it's marking 20 years with some special highlights. Chalk artists will descend upon Perry Festival Plaza and some surrounding sidewalks to create temporary outdoor artwork. Visitors can also expect live music, regional cuisine, and a chance to make their own mini chalk artwork, along with homegrown produce and unique gifts. The event will run from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at Perry Festival Plaza on Main Street. This year's theme is The Pursuit of Happiness. Feature artist Cheyenne DeMarco of Nunda will chalk at the Perry Festival Plaza entrance, while artist Erica Lalita creates a supersized chalk artwork under the Festival Plaza Pavilion. DeMarco's artistic practice is grounded in oil painting and printmaking, with a focus on portraiture, organizers said in a news release. A special project has been painting her cousin Lily as a recurring subject since 2017. As Lily grows, each work documents her maturation and DeMarco's evolving technical and conceptual approach. DeMarco recently adopted watercolor as her primary medium, with its fluidity and quick-drying nature lending itself to her exploration of dance and movement. The medium's spontaneity allows her to capture the speed, agility, and expressive energy of dancers in motion. In addition to the temporary art created on July 11th, DeMarco's work is on display this month at the Arts Council for Wyoming County Gallery on 31 South Main Street. Past feature artists from previous years will also return, and every feature artist since the festival's beginning is invited to contribute their art. Live musical performances are also a big part of the festival and will return this year as always. Kelly's Old Timers will be first to perform, with Creek Bend will take the stage later with a blend of contemporary and traditional bluegrass, Cajun, country, and humor. At the Farmers Market stage, Elise Kelly will share her voice and original music, organizers said in a news release. Folk Faces will close out the day with rowdy jazz and bluesy roots music. Western New York food trucks and other concessions will also be on site, while the combined Perry Public Market and Perry Farmers Market will offer extended hours. Artists will put finishing touches on their works by 3 p.m., and a 4 p.m. award ceremony will feature artists and sponsor recognition and prizes. Perry Festival Plaza will be closed through Sunday afternoon so people can enjoy the artwork for an extended period. Additional events on Saturday will include the annual Tour de Perry community bike ride and the exhibit of Cheyenne DeMarco's work at the Arts Council for Wyoming County. If significant rainfall is forecast, the Chalk Art Festival will take place July 18th. Check www.perrychalkfestival.com for a complete schedule and more information. That's www.perrychalkfestival.com. This event is made possible through contributions from area municipalities, businesses, individuals, and the Perry Area Chamber of Commerce. The program is also made possible with funds from the statewide Community Regrants program. And we'll turn to the opinion page now, an article written by John M. Crisp, an op-ed columnist for Tribune News Service who lives in Texas. There's a better way to make America more religious. Last month, the Texas State Board of Education adopted a required reading list that includes Bible stories and scriptures at every public school grade level, from kindergarten through high school. In first grade, for example, students will learn about Jonah and the whale. Okay, everybody should know the story of Jonah and the whale. Father Maple has barely hoisted and stowed his rope ladder in his ship-shaped pulpit in Chapter 9 of Moby Dick before he begins his sermon thusly. Beloved shipmates, clinch the last verse of the first chapter of Jonah, and God has prepared a great fish to swallow up Jonah. Jonah and the whale make appearances throughout Moby Dick, as does Noah's Ark, references that would puzzle readers who have never heard of Jonah and Noah. How did you learn about Jonah? Probably the same way I did in Sunday school. We learned these stories in a religious context. In my case, we were meant to understand that Jonah was literally swallowed by a great fish and spent 3 days and 3 nights therein under the Lord until the Lord spoke to the fish and had vomited Jonah onto dry land. Other faiths see the story in allegorical terms, a parable meant to teach lessons about obedience and repentance. How will a first grader see it as it's taught alongside Jack and the Beanstalk and the little engine that could? And how will her teacher explain to an inquisitive student the differences between these stories without providing religious instruction of some sort? It's a lot for a first grader and for her teacher. But this is the least of the problems presented by the required Bible reading in public schools. Given that Texas already requires all public schools to prominently display copies of the Ten Commandments in every classroom, critics see required Bible readings as one more attempt to conservative religious forces to blur or destroy the principle that keeps government out of religious instruction. Critics argue convincingly that Bible readings and the posting of the Ten Commandments are thinly veiled efforts to promote Christianity at the expense of students who are Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, or of no religion at all. In fact, preparing students to read Moby Dick may not be the first priority of the Texas Board of Education, after all. But Christians, if you want our nation to be more Christian, there's a better way. Start by supporting more Christ-like political leaders. It's odd. Faith is almost a prerequisite for election in our country. We've elected a few Jews and Muslims, but generally we require candidates to be professing Christians. Atheists need not apply. But once they're elected, we don't care much about how they behave. For example, is President Donald Trump Christian-like? Is he humble or meek? Does he love his enemies? Does he turn the other cheek? Does he welcome the stranger? Does he forgive? Is he guilty of adultery? Does he lay up his treasures in heaven? The Bible says, "Judge not, that ye be not judged." But it also says, "Ye shall know them by their fruits." None of this means Trump is a bad president, but it's a stretch to suggest that he exemplifies a Christ-like man. Since we're talking about Texas, it's worth noting that religious Texans of all stripes have a say this November in whom my home state sends to represent us in the U.S. Senate. On one hand, there's James Tallarico, a professing Christian and a seminarian whose faith seems authentic. His record and his current life appear to be so blameless that the most vicious slander against him that Republicans can come up with so far is that he is a vegan in meat-loving Texas. Apparently, this is not true. On the other hand, Christians can choose Ken Paxton, who has been indicted for securities fraud and impeached by his own party for obstruction of justice, bribery, retaliation, and misuse of office. His wife divorced him on biblical grounds, and that is adultery. So, Christians, if you want America to be more Christian, start at the ballot box, not in the schools. And again, that was written by John M. Crisp, an op-ed columnist for Tribune News Service who lives in Texas. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Batavia Daily News on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Our next headline says, Hornell's Wilkinson named Bills Rochester Region Flag Football Coach of the Year, COTY. The Buffalo Bills announced their 2026 Flag Football Coaches of the Year for 3 regions across the state, and a GLOW region coach was selected for the Rochester region. Hornell head coach Mike Wilkinson was named the Rochester Region Coach of the Year after taking the team to tremendous heights in the first year of the program. In athletics, you need to work to earn the things that you achieve, Wilkinson explained in the Bills' press release. I believe in instilling a passion and love for the sport in my athletes, while at the same time encouraging them to become a better version of themselves. Wilkinson added in the release that his favorite memory was the first game of the inaugural season and seeing the girls rewarded for their hard work and dedication throughout the winter. Hornell not only earned the victory, but also had the support of the community and fans who attended. Hornell started its flag football program this season and enjoyed tremendous success. Wilkinson helped the Red Raiders run the table in the regular season and ultimately claim the Section 5 Class C1 title. Hornell ultimately finished the season 14-1. The success also translated to one of the team's stars, Selena Maldonado, earning a Division I scholarship to play flag football at Mercyhurst University. Wilkinson was also selected as the Daly and Livingston County News Flag Football Coach of the Year. And now here's some local articles, short articles from Batavia. City Council cancels July 13th meetings. The Batavia City Council has canceled its Monday meetings, citing a lack of quorum. The meeting was to include both a conference meeting, which is typically used for discussion, and a business meeting in which council members vote on agenda items. The agendas for the July 13th meetings had not yet been released at the time of their cancellation. Under Batavia's city charter, 6 of the council's 9 members must be present to constitute a quorum, the minimum number of members required to do business. The next city council meeting will be held 5:30 p.m. August 10th in the City Hall Council Boardroom at City Center. Again, from Batavia, Hawley sponsors Red Cross Blood Drive. Assemblyman Steve Hawley, Republican from Batavia, will sponsor an American Red Cross Blood Drive on Friday. The blood drive will take place 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. at Genesee County Social Services on 5130 East Main Street Road. Appointments are encouraged and can be scheduled by visiting redcross-blood.org or calling 1-800-733-2767. That's 1-800-733-2767, or using the Blood Donor app. Enter sponsor code Batavia NY when scheduling. And ILGR plans listening session for families, again from Batavia. A children and youth with special health care needs listening session will be conducted July 21st for Genesee and Orleans County residents. The session is sponsored by Independent Living of the Genesee region. It will take place noon to 1:30 p.m. at the Crickler Executive Business Center on 319 West Main Street. The session will give families and caregivers an opportunity to share their experiences and perspectives in a supportive, confidential setting. Lunch will be provided, and eligible participants will receive a $50 gift card. Child care transportation and accommodations are available upon request. Contact Rebecca Batt at 585-815-8501, extension 401. That's 585-815-8501, extension 401, or rbat@wnyil.org for more information, to register for the session, or to request accommodations. ILGR is part of the Western New York Independent Living, Inc. family of agencies. It's a peer-directed organization dedicated to breaking down barriers and more. Check ilgr.org for more information. And a charity ride to benefit Palermo Foundation. A motorcycle charity run on Saturday will benefit the Ricky Palmero Foundation. The ride is sponsored by the Genesee County Charity Riders. Registration will take place 10 to 10:45 a.m. at Copperhead Creek Bar on 345 West Main Street, where the ride will start and end. Cost is $20 per rider and $10 per passenger, with the ride commencing at 11 a.m., organizers said. And now we'll take a look at the Dear Abby column. This is written by Gene Phillips. We have two letters today. Elderly father is keen to hit the open road. Dear Abby, at 82, my father continues to live alone and unassisted. He's generally in good health, but is starting to recognize that he won't be forever. One thing he really wants to do while he still can, or thinks he can, is take a road trip by himself to visit his sister on the other side of the country. He regularly does shorter drives, 2 to 3 hours, and figures if he takes his time, he can make the 2,000-mile journey by doing many short stretches over a few days. I think it is a colossally bad idea. He is underestimating the fatigue he's going to experience after a long day of driving, and is forgetting how much extra energy it takes to navigate in an unfamiliar place. I'm worried he's going to get in an accident or get lost. After telling him all that, and that he's got better options, I offered to pay for a plane ticket. But he doesn't like the idea of trying to navigate an airport, which makes no sense to me compared to driving, or trying to drive an unfamiliar rental car when he arrives. I've suggested going with him, but he wants to stay for a long visit, and there isn't room for me at my aunt's. Dad has got his mind set on this trip, and I'm worried he's going to leave without telling anyone he's going. If I can't reason with him, what can I do? We don't live close to each other, and I don't have any right to take his keys. But this is nuts, right? And that letter is from Sees a Disaster in Ohio. Dear Abby's response. Dear Sees, whether you or I think your father's plan is nuts is beside the point. He is going to make the trip. However, this does not mean you cannot have some input and assurances. Help your father plan and map out his trip. Note what hotels or motels there are along the way and help him make reservations. Then get his promise to call you every evening when he checks in, so you can know he is all right. It may take some work on your part, but the reassurance of being able to track his progress would be priceless. And our second letter, Dear Abby, my youngest child, early teens, has a hard time making and keeping friends. But he made a new friend 3 weeks ago. I have met the mom once, briefly, and mostly tried to text to discuss timing for plans with my kid and hers. The mom keeps asking me for money. Our stories are similar, and I filled her in. Divorced, single mom, no contact with ex, no support. Most recently, she texted me asking for gas money and additional money to help fund a trip out of state for a funeral. I may live in a nice house, but I have no help in paying for it, plus all the other life expenses. I've told her as much, but I still get these requests. I don't want to be rude to her, but I feel like my next step is to be blunt. However, I don't want to risk hurting the friendship between the kids. How do I make it clear without doing damage? And that letter's from Dollars and Cents. Dear DNS, resist the urge to be blunt. Simply tell the woman nicely that you don't have funds to give her at this time. When she asks again, repeat as necessary. And our last article for this hour comes from Lockport. Ellman challenges Tenney to debates. Democratic congressional candidate Alyssa Ellman is challenging incumbent Representative Claudia Tenney, Republican from Cleveland, to a series of 4 debates ahead of this November's general election, in an attempt to force a more active campaign in a district Tenney has carried by more than 30 points in each of her last 2 elections. Ellman of Lockport issued the challenge on Tuesday, proposing that the debates be hosted by local media organizations, colleges, or civic groups across the district. In a press release, Ellman said she aims to inform voters of their options and to draw Tenney into the public eye. This isn't about political theater. It's about accountability, she wrote. Families are struggling with higher grocery prices, rising utility bills, housing costs, and health care expenses. Farmers are worried about their future. The people of this district have questions, and they deserve answers. Tenney, who was first elected to represent a swath of central New York in 2016, has made few public appearances in the Glow region since her 2022 election to represent the redrawn 24th District, which stretches along Lake Ontario's southern shore from the Niagara River in the west to the Thousand Islands in the northeast. In her call for debates, Ellman said she aims to give the district's voters an opportunity to be heard ahead of the election. Everywhere I go, I hear the same question, "Where's Claudia?" Ellman wrote. People want to know why they don't see her in their communities, why she isn't answering questions, and why she isn't talking to them about the issues that matter most. Well, here's the perfect opportunity. A Tenney campaign spokesperson did not respond to the Daily News request for comment on the debate proposal or other planned public appearances in time for publication Wednesday evening. Before the 2022 election, Tenney appeared in a televised debate against her then opponent, Democrat Stephen Holden of Camillus. She ultimately handily defeated Holden at the polls 65.7% to 34.3%. In 2024, Tenney's popularity held steady despite not debating her Democratic opponent, David Wagenhauser of Waterloo, Seneca County. Voters reelected Tenney 62.2% to 32.5% that year. Election day this year is November the 3rd. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the current issues of the Batavia Daily News. We read from the Batavia Daily News every Saturday at 9 a.m. Your reader has been Will Evans. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the East Aurora Advertiser. At 11 o'clock, we have the Niagara Gazette. And at noon, we have the Dunkirk Observer. Stay with us for these readings and more throughout the day. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability